News Live and abcnews.com. We return now to your regular scheduled programming. David Muir and the entire team will have the latest on world news tonight. I'm Kira Phillips here in Washington, D.C. Glad you could join us.
We're going to continue to follow this breaking news. The Supreme Court has just ruled in a 4-4 decision regarding the funding of religious charter schools. Justice Amy Coney Barrett recused herself from this decision, so it now goes back to the lower court. For more, I want to bring in James Sample. He's a constitutional professor at Hofstra Law School. And James, one of the things that really kind of stood out to me is the fact that this was a 4-4 decision. You had Justice Coney Barrett, who recused herself. First, how often does that happen? We know that she's a devout Catholic, but how often do you see this in SCOTUS cases?
Well, the Supreme Court justices recuse on a fairly regular basis. They make their own decisions in their own case if they determine under the statute, 28 U.S.C. section 455 is the congressional statute that regulates the recusal of judges and justices. And it says basically that a judge or a justice shall recuse him or herself whenever the justices or judges' impartiality, and the key phrase is, might reasonably be questioned. So they make that judgment in their own case, in addition to being a devout Catholic, which is not unique to Justice Coney Barrett relative to the other justices on the court. She's been very active in religious education efforts, and including coming from Notre Dame, which is obviously one of the premier religious education institutions in the United States, before she stepped onto the high court. So her decision is entirely hers. She's not required to explain it. And in this instance, it may end up being a fairly consequential recusal on her part, because as the special report just indicated, and as Devin and Terry both said, that means that the lower court judgment here, the judgment of the Oklahoma State Supreme Court, which somewhat surprisingly, but also somewhat specifically because of the Oklahoma Constitution's prohibition on religious education initiatives and the tie-in to a free education provided by the state of Oklahoma, in addition to the First Amendment considerations of the Establishment Clause. It means that the decision of the Supreme Court today, as Terry indicated, is not precedent. The precedent is the judgment of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and that's only precedent in the state of Oklahoma. So the one thing we can say for certain about this issue is that it will come back before the justices in another case, presumably, maybe very possibly from another state. But for now, the question of religiously funded charter institutions, charter education, religious or state-funded charter education of religiously tied in schools remains the judgment of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, which is a surprising victory and goes against the trend of a dramatic expansion of the role of religion and a dramatic erosion of the wall of separation between church and state over the last couple of decades.
James, I appreciate that. I want to bring in ABC senior Washington reporter Devin Muir, who's also been following this intently. And Devin, can you help break this down for us? I mean, James kind of gave us a little bit of a setup of the implications here, but can you walk us through this case?
Yeah, I mean, this is a case out of Oklahoma, Alex, that had garnered a lot of attention by the religious right because, as James was saying, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court in recent years has sort of cleared the runway for an expansion of religious freedom, both in schools and in public places. And so this was sort of the next logical step. Right-wing groups have been pushing for this for some time, viewing the charter school programs in states as something of a grant program, that states allow private organizations to come in and run schools. And the argument was that if any organization can come in and apply for a grant to run a school, why can't a religious group do the same thing? So they were alleging that there was religious discrimination going on by refusing Catholic schools to be eligible for a charter in any given state. But clearly here that had divided the Supreme Court, even if it didn't specifically answer the question. And as James said, likely will come back. I just wanted to point out, Alex, that this is a significant development for charter school programs in many states. 45 states have charter school programs. 8,000 charter schools in this country, 3.5 million kids attend charter schools. States that weren't even connected to this case were closely watching it because they may have had to discontinue their charter programs or modify their charter programs depending upon how the Supreme Court ruled here. So a big sigh of relief from the charter school movement and from the public school community in light of the Supreme Court's decision leaving this in place, Alex.
All right, a lot to unpack there. Devin Dwyer, James Sample, thank you both. We'll be right back.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida.
It's moving really fast, screaming across the state.
And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
As news breaks live.
We hear the small arms fire around us. We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day, all morning live.
ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day.
ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
Lyle and Eric Menendez, there is new evidence in this case.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is.
Are you going to build it back up?
And ABC News Live.